The final insurrection hearing is, of course, tonight. It's the capstone of a congressional process that's actually done something rare: captivate an often polarized and exhausted nation. Consider, while evening news broadcasts have a couple million viewers, there are tens of millions of viewers that we have seen tune in time and time again for these hearings. Millions more viewers, and discussion goes online. Here's Google data that shows the search spike for January 6th hearing around each of them. Overall searches about January 6th were actually flat for most of this year until the hearings began. And then you can see the most common, well, first of all, you can see on the right that huge spike. That's when these recent hearings began. And the most common related questions are, when is the next hearing? Suggesting people are literally just looking to tune in and get more evidence. The same Google data shows the interest is highest in places like Iowa, Montana, Wyoming, the home of course, Vice Chair Cheney. Another way that this is all breaking through off the coasts and even among independents and some conservatives. Many Americans reacting to revelations in their communities and online. We've even highlighted some of those voices sounding off online and on TikTok. And it may suggest that for all the references to Watergate, there is a kind of national reckoning here. The Watergate process is deemed to have worked, with congressional hearings playing a key role, along with prosecutors like Leon Jaworski and Richard Ben-Veniste, following the evidence that revealed a criminal president trying to kneecap the very Justice Department within which they served. And that makes it pretty interesting. We want to note this tonight, that take those veterans, like the one I mentioned, Watergate Task Force Chief Ben-Veniste is speaking out. He says this attorney general must follow the facts, but decide soon and once and for all whether to indict Trump. He does not have forever. Ben-Veniste also has experience as a member of another acclaimed nonpartisan probe, the 9/11 Commission. And as we go into our hearing coverage, he is our special guest on this big news night. Welcome, sir.
Great to be here, Ari.
How much time does the Attorney General have to make this decision?
Well, there is no specific time requirement, but I suggest in the piece you mentioned that he ought to be able to make a decision about whether there's enough evidence to indict Donald Trump in 6 months' time.
Why 6 months?
Just on the basis of what he has to do, what's already been accomplished. Look, he's not starting from a dead stop. He has been monitoring. His Department of Justice has prosecuted any number of individuals who took part in the January 6th melee for their violent activities. Some of them have cooperated. He's working his way up the chain. And I think within 6 months, he should have enough to decide.
And that's what you lay out, given your extensive experience. Here's what the Attorney General has just said.
No person is above the law in this country. I can't say it any more clearly than that. There is nothing in the principles of prosecution, in any other factors which prevent us from investigating anyone who's criminally responsible for an attempt to undo a democratic election.
In your view, if the evidence does all the way tie back to Donald Trump at a criminal level, would it be dangerous to leave that uncharged or not dealt with because of non-legal reasons, like, well, how it will look, or that he may be running for office again?
It would not be within the remit of the Attorney General to make that decision. He ought to make the decision based on the facts, based on the evidence, based on the determination of whether he can present the case in court that will convince a jury beyond a reasonable doubt that Donald Trump is guilty of criminal activities.
And we mentioned some of the interest in this. Much has changed in the nation since Watergate, especially in how people can get information.
Sure.
As we go into the final hearing tonight, how do you compare the way these hearings have met the moment or tried to break through with the public, which is part of what Congress's job is when you have oversight and investigative hearings, as compared to your extensive experience during Watergate?
I think there's a direct analogy. The Senate committee in Watergate did a phenomenal job They got John Dean to talk extensively. They got Alexander Butterfield to reveal the existence of the secret White House tapes. They provided a foundation upon which we built as prosecutors, putting any number of individuals in jail for their crimes. We were at the point, after Nixon had left office, had resigned in disgrace, the presidency, the first to do so, and then we would decide what would become of now citizen Nixon. So in that sense, we had the same question before us, and we were united in our view on the staff of the Special Prosecutor's Office that Richard Nixon should be prosecuted. Now, Donald Trump is in a different posture, obviously, but our view was that if the facts supported it, it was our obligation to move forward. President Ford took that decision away with his pardon of Richard Nixon, and he paid a price for it. The wisdom of his decision is still something that historians will debate. But we don't have that situation with Donald Trump. There is no pardon in the offing as a preliminary matter. A decision must be made by the Attorney General. If there is evidence to present to a grand jury requesting an indictment.